that, but we are going to get rolling because we have a ton to talk about today. Today's session is on AI and the future of nonprofit fundraising. We hope that all of these sessions, we do them every 2 weeks. Many of you have been to many of them. Many of you have been to at least a few. We try to make them all as helpful as possible. I will say that few of them reach the level of sort of career changing to the degree that this one will. And so we're looking forward to diving in on AI, what's happening, and actually how to use it this calendar year to help hit your goals. So excited to dive in here. So let's go. A couple housekeeping notes before we get started. This event is CFRE approved for 1 credit. We've added a question at the end of the webinar, and just make a small note in that little checkbox. Very, very simple. Keep it easy for you. And then what happens if you get audited is we'll back you up with these. So very simple. Make sure to do that. And yeah, let's dive in. So here's the agenda. Really basic and straightforward. Some very quick intros. We'll talk about some of the recent developments in artificial intelligence. Talk about how this is applying to giving and a couple of sort of macro trends and really interesting insights there. And then we're going to get super hands-on and say, okay, great. Of the things that we're going to do in the next 10 days, how can we try using AI for some of them? What will make that good versus bad? What will make it fun versus painful? And we'll go from there. We will also send the recordings and the slides around later today. Someone's still going to ask in 10 minutes whether we're sending the slides around after the fact, but the answer is yes, we are. So stay tuned for that. Quick intros, and thank you for all of you who continue to introduce yourself. My name is Patrick, very lucky to be the co-founder and co-CEO of FreeWill, alongside of my wonderful friend, Jenny Shias-Spradling. I live in Miami, Florida. Jenny lives in downtown Seattle, Washington. And the really exciting news is that between now and our next webinar, Jenny is going to have her second child. So I am about to pilot the ship or captain the ship solo. So send me your hopes and prayers as we try to go without Jenny, who's unbelievably amazing. And we'll try to get by for a few months before she's back. Really lucky to be accompanied by the FreeWill team, past $8 billion in terms of money committed and raised for charity. A lot of this is in planned giving. It's also in what we call smart giving, stock giving, donor advised funds, qualified charitable distributions, cryptocurrency, all super exciting. And we've also passed 1,300 nonprofit partners, including many of you. So if that's you, just take a lot of gratitude through the screen from all of us to you. We love working together. More gratitude for you. We're so glad you're here. We love being able to do these things for you and with you. One of the things we'll do this week is give away another one of my favorite books. And on the topic of artificial intelligence, let's just talk about how intelligence works. And so this is a great book. Some of you have probably already read it, called Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. Daniel Kahneman, notable for writing this book, also notable for winning the Nobel Prize in economics, which is very, very impressive. So it really talks about sort of the 2 modes of thinking, how that works, how the brain works. It's really helpful to understand yourself a little bit better, your relationships, your colleagues, your donors, your friends, et cetera. At the end of the session, again, we'll drop a note in the chat, and that link will be to a survey, and then you can put your name and your address, et cetera, in the survey. Okay, a couple of other quick things before we get rolling. We asked you how your week is going, and some pretty good things, right? Folks are reporting being very happy, not a lot of anxiety. Generally, we're in summer, people are feeling good. Some of the highest numbers we've seen, so that's great. And then also when we ask you how confident you are about hitting your goals this year, we're really bouncing back here. And so after a little bit of downwards, hopefully some uptick. And so that will be exciting to see. Great. So now we're going to dive in on AI. And very briefly, like, what is AI at a top level, and why are we talking about it so much now? And just some very quick definitions. Artificial intelligence, is we're going to use it in this webinar, and there's a bunch of different definitions, is the science and engineering of making intelligent machines, right? Machines that can learn, that can adapt, can specialize, et cetera. Why is this so important? Well, a lot of people think this is going to be unbelievably world-changing. Bill Gates who many of you know, says that the development of AI is as fundamental as the creation of the microprocessor, which is the sort of origins of the modern computer, the personal computer, the internet, the mobile phone. The CEO of Google recently said this is more important than electricity or fire in terms of human inventions, which is sort of wild. And so we'll give you a little bit of our take on that, and then we'll dive into some specifics. So we did a session in March, and many of you were there, many of you weren't, and we talked a little bit about the rise of AI in modern fundraising. And in that session, we covered the long history of artificial intelligence. We went a lot deeper into what it is and how it works. And we introduced a lot of you all to some of the finer points of this new tool. And what we heard is that there was very strong interest from fundraisers in learning how to use AI to be better at their jobs, right? Faster, better quality output, and happier, right? That's really the metrics that we're looking at. And so today we're going to look at some of the latest developments. What happened between March and now? We'll talk about how some of your peers are already using artificial intelligence to some pretty wild success and really interesting use cases, and some tips. And here we can see in that final bullet, our first typo of the day. So that's on me. Apologies for all of you. I don't know if you're like me, but when you read something in the magazine or newspaper, there's a typo, it sort of hurts a little bit. So my apologies for that one. As we think about artificial intelligence, there are a couple of ways that I think we should just start to adapt to this new world, right? If you have not yet engaged with this is as good a time as any to start. Because this is moving so quickly, you want to start now, and so that it's easier to learn along the way as new advancements come to be. We also want to stay curious, right? So sometimes what I hear is, I tried it didn't work for this thing, probably not for me. And instead, what we should realize is a lot of the things that AI can't do, it may be able to do soon. A lot of the things that it can do, it was not able to do 6 months ago. And so we're really seeing a big shift, and we'll talk more about why that is in a moment. It's not perfect, but it will be better or as good as humans at a lot of things very quickly, and in some cases already are. And then generally have fun with this, right? There aren't a lot of moments where you get a real front seat at history, especially in something that is good, as opposed to the bad things that happen in history. And so for those of you that don't have kids yet or don't have grandkids, you will be telling them about the early days of artificial intelligence at some point. Maybe you'll be telling your great grandkids if you already do. So let's take a quick look at the recent developments in artificial intelligence. And by the way, you'll see a lot of these images on the right side. This is a fun one of Superman. These are virtually all of them were created by artificial intelligence, which is interesting. They were not hand-drawn, they were not made by our designer, and they were all created by AI. So in our lifetimes, and presuming that most of you were alive at least in 1997, we've witnessed achievements in AI through our lifetimes that are pretty remarkable. So in 1997, and those of you that were watching the news at the time, remember this was a huge moment that IBM's Deep Blue beat world chess champion Garry Kasparov, widely seen as the best chess player in the world at the time, in a really big first. In 2005, Stanley, which was a self-driving car, which felt revolutionary at the time, wins DARPA's Grand Challenge. The US military starts to invest in things like this. In 2008, Google introduces voice search to iPhone. That was a really big leap forward at the time. In 2011, IBM Watson wins Jeopardy, which again was a really big leap forward because a lot of it was language processing, understanding turns of phrase and humor, which is often challenging for computers. Apple releases Siri. In 2012, Google creates a 16,000 computer neural network that can teach itself to recognize a cat. Seems small, actually quite big. There are a lot of things that computers are historically bad at, and this was a big leap forward. In 2015, Tesla released its autopilot feature, which was a semi-autonomous driving system. In 2020, OpenAI GPT-3 was released, although not to the general public. And then in 2023, as we rush forward here, in February, Microsoft launches an AI-powered search engine tool through Bing. In March, Google follows rapidly behind. I mean, these companies are in full sprint here. In April, demand for AI-related professional skills is rising across all sectors, and the first chief AI officer job postings appear. So it is almost certain that if you are looking for a job, not necessarily in the next 3 months, but let's call it 6 or 8 or 10 months from now, you will be asked about your experience with artificial intelligence in that job interview. In June, Meta, which is the parent company of Facebook and Instagram and WhatsApp, planned to implement AI across all of its platforms. In June, also ChatGPT boasts 1.6 billion website visits, which is pretty stunning. Political parties are already using it for fundraising emails. In July, this is not necessarily world-changing, but FreeWill, our company, launched Willy, which was an AI nonprofit buddy, not quite widely as used, and another tool called Sophie, which I'm going to share today, which is super cool. These are both free and widely available for nonprofits, and more than 1,000 nonprofits have used them already. Super, super cool. Sean says we skipped the biggest leap, GPT-4 in November, and that's right? So Sean, we should have added that. GPT-4 and GPT-3, I think GPT-3 actually was released in November. And what that did is it brought AI to life for the general public in a way that had never been sort of widely available. And it was sort of an aha moment for literally hundreds of millions of people, if not more. So really, really cool. So just how fast is this happening? Here's a look at Google searches for artificial intelligence over the past 20 years, and you can see how much this shoots up, right? So the world's attention, it went from very, very little. Okay, cool that IBM beat Gary in chess. Cool that we beat that IBM beat the Jeopardy champion at Jeopardy. Also exciting, but this sort of VOOP, format. I mean, just see how much attention at a global level is now. When we look at things like how does this compare to humans, you can see things like handwriting recognition, which feels like a very human thing. Machines are now better than humans. Speech recognition, you can see a little bit of progress and then shooting up. Image recognition, shooting up. Reading comprehension, better than most humans. Language understanding, better than most humans. And you can see how quickly the improvements were made, right? That's really the point. Now, the interesting thing here is they're unlikely to hang out at 20% better, right? These graphs will likely continue over time and get better and better and better. Another really fun example that I like to show folks on our team is this is an example of how quickly AI has improved in image generation. So this is 5 versions. You can see them here of the prompt is a selfie from Yoda. Yoda is the Star Wars character, for those of you that aren't immediately attuned with this. And you can see version 1, a little scary. Version 2, not quite working the kinks out. Version 3 looks sort of like something, but not Yoda. Version 4, a lot better. Version 5, pretty outstanding, right? I mean, look at version 5. Now, the thing that's really mind-blowing here is these 5 versions are released over the course of 1 calendar year and several months apart. So it's not the case that this is a 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. It's getting so much better so quickly. And that version 4, which looks decent, version 5 is March 23. It's only 12 months after the beginning of it in 2022. So this is pretty remarkable. But why is this happening so fast, right? So we're looking at all of these reasons. We're looking at all this proof that AI is sort of, shooting up. And why is it happening so fast? Well, historically, if you go back and read the literature about artificial intelligence 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago, there's a lot of writing about the concept of the singularity. And some of you will know what this is, some of you won't. But the singularity is this concept that at some point, when AI gets a little smarter than humans, it can make AI that's a little bit smarter than that AI, which can make AI that's a little bit smarter than that AI, and so on and so forth, this exponential growth, until you create this super smart AI that's building on top of itself at a really radical pace, right? So that's super interesting. It's a really interesting concept. We are not there yet. That is not why AI is coming so quickly. Instead, what's happening is the development of AI and the use cases around AI are growing and improving at orders of magnitude, 10, 100, 10,000 times faster than previous inventions that are this game-changing. Electrification, industrialization, the use of fire, right? The use of steam-powered and gas-powered motors, the adoption of the computer, the internet, the mobile phone, the smartphone, right? All these things felt like they happened quickly. AI is happening a lot faster. Now, why is that? Well, it's receiving massive attention and resources and hard work from some incredibly talented people, right? The first is a vast network of global entrepreneurs all around the world who are seeing, wow, there's so many things that were not previously possible here. And a lot of investors say, yeah, that's right. We'll fund you in hopes of growing that business. So you have a huge shift, and Jenny and I know a lot of folks in the entrepreneurial world, and a ton of attention is shifting to artificial intelligence now. But on top of that, in academia and researchers, right? So many folks are in sort of the broader academic world are focusing on AI, both to improve AI and to try to find use cases for things like protein folding or DNA analysis or economic predictions, right? So you have so many smart folks in academia shifting their attention here at the same time, reading about what the entrepreneurs are doing. The entrepreneurs are reading about what the researchers are doing. And then on top of this, your Googles, your Facebooks, right? Twitter to some degree, Netflix, Amazon, Microsoft, all of the largest tech companies in the world, all of them, and many of the largest non-tech companies in the world are putting tens and hundreds of billions of dollars into advancing artificial intelligence. So you have a ton of these smartest technologists in the world to a greater degree than anything ever, literally, focused on AI. And they're learning from each other, right? So this is totally unprecedented in I would say modern history, but in all of history. And because they're able to see what other folks are working on it, there's this sort of rapid growth on top of the other learnings from all around the world. And so the velocity of progress, where literally we see new tools available every single day, is just totally unprecedented. And the important thing to realize when we look at the speed of growth here is that it's actually getting faster, right? So we're looking at that curve and it's going up and up and up. And it's likely that more will change in the next 3 months than in the last 3 months. There are more people working on AI now than there were 6 months ago. And we've seen all of the radical shifts happen in the last 6 months. So this is really, 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 really important. Best advice here, stay curious, hang on for the ride, try it out, and know that a lot of things that are not yet possible will be possible very soon. For instance, one thing we will not really talk about today is AI created videos. Now they sort of exist right now in sort of in a proof of concept way, but they're not usable really for folks like us. And yet, when we're talking about this, and we can make a note and see if we're right, in December or January, my guess is that there'll be some really applicable uses of AI created video for you and your donors that don't really exist yet. And so we'll dive into those down the road. All right, so let's talk about, so I hope you get the big picture there, right? That this is the most important technological advancement of certainly the last decade, if not our lifetime, and it's growing incredibly quickly. So what does that mean for nonprofits? Well, the first thing is that you all are actually really seeing this. So in March, which is only 4 months ago, we asked you, do you already use some form of AI in your work? And in March, 11% did, which is honestly a decent number for a tool so new. And 4 months later, that number has basically tripled, right? A little less than tripled. And so almost a third of you all are already using AI in your work. And my guess is when we come back to this in October-ish, right, the number is going to be 65%. And when we come back to it in a year, it's going to be about 95%. And so you can see how radically different and how much this is growing in our field, not just in sort of some distant world of medical technology or deep in the throes of, in the caverns of Google or whatever. We also ask if you've used it in your personal life, a little bit slower growth here, but you see in March, 34% used it, play around in their personal life, and how much of that is transferred to okay, now we're using it for work purposes. But about a little under half of you using your personal life, this is going to be, I don't know, 80, 90% by the end of the year. And we also asked you if you could let AI handle one task to delegate. And we see things like administrative tasks, data analysis, which is getting a lot better, donor prospect research, a lot of personalized donor outreach as a benefit here. Some other we'll talk about in a second. And then very few people said, I don't want to give AI anything, right? I think that number is about 2% here, where they say, no, let's not do it. So it's quite valuable here. When we ask, what else do you want to do? You say writing acknowledgement letters. This is a really good use case. We'll talk about this in a second, but really, really good to highly personalize thank you notes in a way that you just fundamentally don't do right now. Scripts for remarks, presentations, research, proofreading. Should have used some more AI proofreading on this, this presentation, idea generation, et cetera, right? So a lot of people say when I'm stuck, I go to AI and I come up with 12 ideas and I pick the best one and I build on that. So that really happens. And, I think the truth is when we look at various industries, there's a lot of use cases for a lot of different industries. Nonprofit fundraising is a really, really good one. Why is that? Most of you, when we talk one-on-one, you say, look, our team is understaffed, we're undertrained, we're overworked, we're busy, we care so much about the thing, but we're tired, right? There's so much going on and we really want to hit our goals this year, but we're dealing with inflation, we're dealing with complexities, there's some staff turnover, et cetera. This stuff is hard, right? You're doing hard work. But it's an area where a lot of the work is communication, both sort of verbal and written, and there's a lot of space for AI to improve there. And the research that is coming out of MIT and Stanford, we talked about how much groundbreaking research there is happening at top academia and cross academia. It really shows that three things are true at the same time when people are using AI. They're more productive, meaning they're working faster at the same thing. The output of the work is getting better. Both of those are good news. And they're happier doing it, right? So if you can make yourself or your team better, faster, and happier, this generally feels like a no-brainer here. So we look at this in a couple of pieces here, right? The first is faster. And the same research at Stanford and MIT found that significant increases in productivity. The big shift here is not that your top performers are so much better, it's that your lower performers, or in some cases, folks who are just newer, can create a lot higher quality work faster. So if you have someone who really struggles to write that opening message to a prospect, or write that follow-up message, or even make a plan for the day, right? These are the folks that can get to above average very quickly. And those of you who are managers, you don't have to raise your hand now, but you know that you have some employees who are just not quite up to speed with everybody else. And this is a really good way to get them up there very quickly. For higher performers, it can help them do things faster. It can help them reach more donors, right? So if you have someone who is your world-class major donor, major gift officer, right? And they're just wonderful and they're very hands-on, well, you can take the administrative stuff off their plate. You can have them meet with more donors, spend more of that face-to-face relationship time, and suddenly raising a lot more money while also probably being happier if that's the thing that brings them joy. The other thing we see, and we hear this from you a lot, especially as we went through COVID together, is that burnout is very real. According to a global survey, this is from ZDNet, nearly 60% of workers think that AI can help with burnout. And we know that burnout is an even bigger deal in the nonprofit industry because for all the reasons we just talked about. The voluntary rate of turnover, meaning I'm leaving, but I'm not because I got fired, but because I just don't want to be here anymore and I'm tired or I want to switch jobs, is almost 20%. It is significantly higher than the broader labor market, right? So turnover and burnout is higher in our sector than it is anywhere else, not anywhere else, but than it is on the average. And this is the thing that we have to fix together. And this is one really big avenue here. So how do we think about this, right? So we talked about increasing research, the MIT research. You see here, very similar groups before, and then how much time did they spend on minutes? You see that the same crew, right, accomplished something in 16 minutes versus 28 minutes when they used AI. So much, much faster. And then we had an independent group rate the output of that work, and it was considerably better, right? So the average grade without AI was a 3.8 about. Average grade with AI is a 4.5. So better work, less time. And then the important thing, because these are all humans working, is we said, okay, well, how satisfied are you with your job? And what you see here is a pretty big shift in standard deviations. So the math might not make obvious sense to you all, but this is how your academic papers are going to show it. And that treated group, significantly better off than the untreated group. So super, super important. So let's talk specifics, right? How you can be using AI in 2023. So putting this into action in our jobs, the really important thing is don't give up the stuff that you like doing, right? It's not mandatory here that you use AI. And if you don't want to do it, no problem at all. But we do want to recognize that AI can do a lot of things, and many of them are already better than us. And remember, it's improving really quickly. So there are things that I would have experimented with 3 months ago and thought, this is okay. And doing it last week, you think, oh, this is really good. It's getting really, really good here. Some organizations are already finding that their fundraising emails written by AI, for instance, are outperforming those written by good writers. Now, this is really interesting. It still takes a lot of work on someone who's traditionally a writer to help structure this up, put it in place. So it's not eliminating roles, but it's making those roles considerably more effective. And that's really, really interesting to see. And then generally, as I'm sure you can tell, it's a lot faster than even the fastest of us, especially in terms of content generation. Right before this call, I was playing with something called Llama, which is a new language processing model that is open source and put out by Facebook and Microsoft combined. And it's often used for businesses, but it created really good fundraising emails in about 6 seconds. And I read them and they were fantastic. So really interesting to see. So there are a few things in the nonprofit spheres, particularly fundraising, which is what we're all here to talk about, that it does really well. So fundraising emails, some of these are really, really good. And one of the most important and exciting things here is, I've led email fundraising teams. I've led digital fundraising at nonprofits. And you can work really hard on a message, but it's hard to work really hard on 20 messages. And so if I'm writing to, I saw Pat, who we mentioned earlier, get to do some cool hiking at West Virginia State University with his dog. He's probably writing some great stuff. And Pat, this might not be your exact job, but stick with me here. And yet, are those fundraising messages, every fundraising message, is it tailored to the individual school or major that person graduated from? Is it tailored to the class they went to? Now, our ability to create separate messages for the class of 2005, 2004, 1994, that takes a lot of work. And yet what we see here with AI is that in an hour, we could likely create individual messages for each of the class of the last 50 years. And that's really, really exciting. The other thing you can do, if you don't want to do that segmentation, is instead of writing one, right, write your own, go for it, and then create 5 or 6 or 10 more messages and read all of them and either get new ideas or just use the one that you think is best. So we're so used to producing one great thing or 2 great things, it's sort of outside our experience to create 12 great things and then pick which one we think is most exciting. So very, very cool here. Highly personalized thank you notes, except for your super big donors. Most of you are not writing meaningfully long, thoughtful, personalized thank you notes. It's just not happening. And we've talked to a lot of you. If you are, God bless you. You are way outside the norm. And so that's a really good avenue. We'll look at that in a second. Things like press releases, right? Things like remarks for an event, having a first draft there can be really, really useful. And then things like stewardship emails and letters, right? So your donors along the way, are we updating them on the things they care most about? How are we thinking about that? So really, really important. Direct mail, surprisingly good at direct mail. So I know a lot of you work really hard on this, on postcards and on letters, like really strong direct mail letters, quite strong. So beyond marketing writing, right? So marketing writing tends to be the thing that people think of first. Write me a fundraising letter, write me a thank you note. But there's a lot of other work that you're doing that can really get put in here, right? Think about an entire email calendar, your fundraising email calendar for the whole year, right? You put all the things you know into it. What are the key dates? What are your big goals? How often do you want to send things? And then create a pretty thoughtful calendar. Same thing with social media. A memo to your board about why they should start giving appreciated assets. Those of you that have been with us in other sessions know how important it is to shift the way people give. Excuse me. But many of you aren't super comfortable talking about why someone should move from cash to giving stock, even if that stock is going to be 10 times larger. And so we can create memos quite quickly on why the board should think about it, or the folks that they talk to should think about it. A 2-pager for your staff on how to talk to older donors about qualified charitable distributions. All these things can get made very quickly and customized. And lots more, as you might imagine. So Jonathan says, how do you make an email calendar with AI? We'll talk about that in a second. And so when we talk to you all, one of the main uses and the main tools that people are using is ChatGPT and GPT-4, right? So there's version 3 and 3.5, and GPT-4 is considerably better than previous versions. It's also considerably better than most of the other models, right? So I told you about Google's version and Microsoft's version. GPT-4, having spent a ton of time in each of this, is a ton better. It just is. It's $20 a month. You have to put a lot of work into prompt generation, but it's quite good. And for most folks, that will be quite useful. Lynn says, how do we know which version we're using? When you go to the chat, you'll see it. There are little options at the top on what to use. If you're not paying, you're probably not using GPT-4. Other options, they're just not as good. And they may get better quickly, but they're not where GPT-4 is. And that's too bad. Generally a pretty good tool to use. It's a generally good use of $20 a month, even in your personal life. When you use this, a few things you want to consider. The first is, and this is sort of an underrated way to structure this stuff, is to give it a very clear role. Who is the AI supposed to be? You are in this case, you are a senior copywriter at the Illinois Humane Society. You want to give it a clear task. Please write a fundraising email to help fund our adoption drive in September. And then let's give it clear parameters. Message should be between 400 and 500 words and relatively informal in tone. And then obviously any other context you have really helps, right? So the same way that if you were to send a super smart intern away, you'd want to give it the same sort of instructions to do that. So really, really smart. One small note here is that when I started using this for fundraising messages, I would say, write me a 400-page letter. And then it would be exactly 400 word. And then it would be exactly 400 words, sometimes sort of shortening the last sentence to get in there. So generally giving it a range of words is much better. What else? The other thing to know, and so, we heard you, we've listened, we also love inventing stuff. It's just, we're super nerdy, have a little, what project we call FreeWill Labs, and we always build new things. And one of the things that I'm super proudest of from our team, and that I've personally worked a ton on, is something called Willy, which we built for all of you. And so it is, by the way, totally free, just to be super clear, because you're going to ask me in a second. Totally free, stay in free. There's not some sort of secret, like, after 3 uses, it turns into $20,000 a year or whatever. And it can write all sorts of messages and different pieces of content for organizations like yours. More than 1,000 people have used it already. The comments in the chat said, people say, I love it. It's been amazing to use. It's freaking amazing to use. And we use it all the time. It's built on GPT-4, so it has the back end of the best available AI for mass use, but it's free for you. We cover the cost. And what we've done here is we've combined artificial intelligence, right? So these models are really good. And there's a lot of stuff going on the back end to make sure that all the research-backed best practices are built in. So all the stuff that you hear me yelling at you to do about making sure we're referencing non-cash options, making sure we're using social proof, all these things that make something great based on the science are built into the model. Usually it delivers best-in-class content in seconds, but sometimes it does take a minute or two, and we are sorry that it takes a minute or two, but it's still probably faster than what you would do otherwise. It's very, very user-friendly. So it's a very good way for folks to jump into this without having to figure this out. Some of the early feedback is something like this. I used a Willy for a thank you note. I really like the way it sounded. It's particularly interesting as I'm encouraging gift officers to do more individual outreach, both thank yous and stewardship check-ins. Something like this is a huge time saver. So you think about, maybe you could write a really good letter to one of your donors, but you're probably not going to write 25 really good letters in the next 2 hours. And this is something that can do it. Whitney says, I've been using it for 2 weeks and love it. Creates great thank you notes, etc. Here's an example, right? So all of these, by the way, are fake. We didn't sort of steal what people put in. So we have nothing to do with Phoenix Rescue Mission, just telling you there. Who are we thanking? We're thanking Anne. We're the Phoenix Rescue Mission. It should be 200, 300 words. Remember that range. What are we thanking? I think an $8,000 gift of stock is what we're thanking you for. What's the nonprofit's address? Thanks. Sorry, what's the website? Why is the website in there? Because it's not just sort of generic thank you notes. It's so we can use messages on your website and themes and tone from the website, which is pretty cool. Name of the email sender, in this case, James Dean, not real again, director of development. We pick a tone. There's 4 or 5 different options for what tone you want. And then we have some instructions here. Please highlight that their donation will help save lives and provide shelter during the extreme heat wave that Phoenix is happening right now. It recommends 3 subject lines and which one you might want to use, although you can pick any of them, right? We talk about how important subject line generation is. And here's a little bit of what it looks like. It says, Dear Anne, I hope this message finds you well. I'm reaching out today to express our heartfelt gratitude for your extraordinary generosity. Your recent gift of $8,000 in stock is not just a donation, it's a lifeline for so many here in Phoenix. Your support joins the effort of countless others who believe in our mission to transform lives and end homelessness. It's because individuals like you, Anne, that we continue to provide refuge during extreme heat waves. Your contribution is making a tangible difference right now as we speak. Let me paint a picture for you. As the temperature soars, imagine the relief a person feels when they step in from the scorching heat into the cool, welcoming environment of the Phoenix Rescue Mission. That's the feeling you're providing with this gift, Anne. You're offering more than just a shelter. You're giving hope, dignity, and a chance for a fresh start. In these challenging times, your stock donation is a beacon of hope. It helps us provide essential services, meals, shelter, counseling, and job training. Anyway, et cetera, et cetera. We're not going to read the whole thing, but like this is really good and considerably better than a lot of the thank you notes that folks are writing. And it's really, it's not, I think a lot of people think that AI is going to be the old game that we played in the car as kids. Remember Mad Libs, where it's like, thank you, Anne, for your gift of X. We appreciate you for Y. And it's not that. It's really, really, really personalized. Mad Libs, by the way, are super fun if you have kids and you need something to do on your summer road trips. When we shift over to fundraising emails, one of the recent feedback we got said, I used the nonprofit fundraising email to help recruit a sponsorship. I got a reply quickly, a meeting on the same day after sending the email. It looks like it's going to result in a sponsorship. Clearly, we're thrilled. We've never interacted with this before, right? Oh, Steve, that's you. Great. And it happened. So Steve updates us that the sponsorship got it. So congratulations, Steve. Super exciting. Just great to know. That's awesome. So when we look at fundraising emails, right? For instance, this might be the children's school, which I believe is something we made up. But again, we're sort of modeling this for you. How long it should be. This is for grandparents. So anyone who's marked as a grandparent and a donor of the children's school. Again, from James, Director of Development here. That guy's pretty busy, somewhat informal. We're going to mention that students will be back on campus, and we want to see 5 subject lines. So here are the subject line options. We're not going to read them all out, but you can see we really want a lot of different ideas, so you can pick the best one. And here's the message, right? Dear grandparents, we hope this message finds you well. As we look forward to welcoming our students back on campus for a new school year, I'm reaching out to share an opportunity for you to make a significant impact on their educational journey at the children's school, et cetera, et cetera. As a grandparent, you've seen firsthand the transformative power of our school. You've watched your grandchildren grow, learn, and thrive within these walls. Now we need your help to ensure this exceptional educational experience continues for every student, et cetera, right? And then it has a little note here. Here's where we can link to the nonprofit's donate page. It also, by the way, as we get to that second paragraph, says, reminds people they can make some tax smart gifts, which is one of the most important shifts people need to be making in their fundraising writing. And again, it links you to where that is, right? So it's helping you along the way here, et cetera, et cetera. Really, really excellent stuff here. And you can imagine it takes us about 1.5 minutes to tweak this for parents, to alumni, and suddenly we have 3 amazing messages that really speak to your donors at a level that just really isn't possible for most teams right now. Other folks say, I can see myself running emails, letters, posts, and others through it to fine tune and idea generate. I can see it being especially helpful for our sustaining gift officers who do more mass mailings without personal touches. So the ability to really specialize here is pretty exciting. One of you asked about email fundraising calendars. How does that work? And so I wanted to give you another example here. So we love an organization called Austin Pets Alive. I think we're very animal friendly today. And they need a plan, theoretically, again, for July through June, right? This is their fiscal year, starting in Q3. This is the website. They do awesome work, by the way. If you want to chip in, go help them out. And we said, okay, well, let's send fundraising emails about twice a month, maybe more, at end of year. And then what do we want to but how are we building this calendar? Well, we have this thing called Pours for Pets throughout the month of July. Giving Tuesday is a big deal for us. And let's make sure that we have some cat and dog related puns, right? And interesting to see because historically, not that great at humor is AI. So here's what it looks like. Here's basically the memo. If you're sort of a middle manager in fundraising, here's what you're going to write to your leadership about what the fundraising plan should be. To ensure a smooth and successful fundraising year for Austin Pets Alive, I formulated a comprehensive fundraising strategy, focusing on our key goals, plan giving, major giving, donor education, event promotion, and even incorporates a few puns. So you can see what we have in July, around this big event. August is Make a Will month, so we have space for that. September is a perfect time to give. Fall, September later, highlighting donor advised funds. October, a couple big things around estate planning awareness week and a normal fundraising email. We're educating folks in November in advance of Giving Tuesday about smarter ways to give. And then you can see December is a lot more full because it's end of year. We want a lot of giving, right? And you may want to make some tweaks here, but it's pretty good. And for some people, it's going to be better than what you might create otherwise. So pretty awesome. So there we go. Social media posts, again, one last example here. And this is the feedback we got. It needed a little bit of editing, but mostly when I didn't provide sufficient information, which is really important. It was great that it generated the post with inserts for my additions. So again, hypothetical here, for the American Heart Association, we want a Facebook post to inform supporters of a 3X matching campaign the week of July 24th. Again, we have tone here. All donations generated to this campaign will donate to our work teaching CPR in schools across the country. And what do we have? Oh, here it is. Great. And so you have an example here of what the social media post is, and it suggests what the image is. And so it's not going to create the image for you, but it will say, this is roughly what we think might be the best image for the social media post. So pretty cool. What else can it do? Personalized direct mail. This is a really brave new world out there. Social media calendar, press releases, fundraising. It can evaluate your fundraising emails. So it can tell you, this is, you're doing great. Here are a couple areas where you might want to perk it up a little bit or make some shifts and a lot more. Okay. So one more announcement, and we're going to storm through because we got a couple other things to cover, is the other thing we built recently, which is really fun. And I'm sort of sharing it with everyone. Obviously, it's not going to be relevant to all of you, is a tool called Sophie. What is Sophie? We sort of talk about it as Willie's cousin. It's really focused on faith-based organizations and houses of worship. So even some of you, might be actively involved in your church or synagogue or mosque, and not necessarily in your professional context, but still probably helping with fundraising. That's there. Also built on GPT-4, also totally free. And right now, excuse me, focuses on basically every Christian denomination, including Catholicism, obviously, and the main branches of Judaism, Reform, Orthodox, Conservative, etc. More faiths are coming soon as we continue to build this out, but it's super interesting to see. my friend and colleague Chris built this, and it's so interesting. Why do we call it Sophie? Because the Hebrew word sofer means writer. It also has very similar roots to counter, which means sort of, fundraiser, folks bringing in money. The Greek word Sophia means wisdom, and we hope it helps you write a lot of the things you care about in this sector of the world. So as an example, let's make an announcement from the pulpit, right? And this is in the Christian denomination. This is a Roman Catholic denomination at the Cathedral of the Holy Cross. This is how long it's going to be. This is the website for the church in Boston. Father O'Leary is going to be giving the announcement. And then how many scripture references do we want to use in our announcement? And we're going to automatically find the components of scripture that best match your announcement and flow it in here. And by the way, as many of you know, some of you don't, but certainly the Bible translations are not used by all the same denomination. So you're picking which Bible translation your denomination uses, what denomination your church is, the tone of the announcement, and any additional information like, hey, we want to talk about planned giving and legacy giving as a way to support the parish. So what does it say here? Good morning, dear parishioners. I'm Father Leary. You might skip that if everyone knows, et cetera, et cetera. We're all here because we believe in something larger than ourselves. We exist to live with the mercy of God. And this beautiful mission is realized every day through our generous hearts. Now, there are many ways we can express our generosity and make a tangible difference in our community. Acts of kindness, volunteering our time, offering prayers, all precious gifts that enrich the church family. Today, I want to talk about the power of financial giving. And then it calls out from the second letter of Corinthians from St. Paul, chapter 9, verse 7. Paul teaches us each must do as already determined without sadness or compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. This verse reminds us that giving should come from a place of joy and love, not obligation, et cetera, right? So a whole bunch of other stuff here. Not going to read all of it. Probably you can hear my voice going. In the second component, we're also pulling from Proverbs chapter 11, verse 25, and about securing resources for the church. It's about nurturing our souls, et cetera, right? So all of this happens. And by the way, if we're talking about Southern Baptists, we're pulling, different language, different verses, different Bible translation, different language. Obviously, as an announcement on a Saturday in Reformed Judaism world, that's going to be very different, and so on and so forth. So super, super cool. I will, again, my dear friend and colleague, Chris Hall, who those of you, many of you FreeWill partners will work with him directly and his team, unbelievably awesome, put a ton of love and work in here. So this is super cool. So what does it do? All the things that Willie does, but announcements on Saturday or Sunday, depending on your faith, bulletin inserts, ideas for sermons, idea for Bible study questions, appeals for the Jewish high holidays, and a lot more. And we're always adding stuff, right? So super cool. And I think we're working on adding some other faiths as well, right? So if you're fundraising for your mosque and you don't see anything up here, know we're working on it. And by the way, if you want to give some input into what it looks like for Islamic fundraising, shoot us a note. We'd be happy to chat. So super cool. Willie, by the way, is willie.freewill.com. Sophie is sophie.freewill.com. So check that out. Super cool. Okay, some final thoughts. We're running up on time here. And look, in the last 4 months, the percentage of you all who've used AI for your work has tripled, right? I mean, this is sort of astonishing speed for an industry that we can admit doesn't always move super quickly. Over the next 4 months, it should at least double to the point where non-AI users are in the minority. And those of you who are using AI are using it much, much more, right? This is just going to happen. And I would be surprised if it didn't. We'll all be learning along the way. I will be learning, you will be learning. The tools will be getting better as we get feedback from you all. And so stay open, stay curious, have fun. This should be exciting. It's a little trepidatious, but it's pretty cool along the way. And then we are super curious. So please share your ideas, your thoughts, your experiences, the things you totally hated about AI with us. We'd love to hear it. And basically what we're doing is building the future together as a community. So we love that. Okay, a couple quick things. I am, first of all, as I share some final things, My colleague Phoebe is going to draft a survey in the chat. Please, please, please fill it out. We really need some of your thoughts about AI. We really need to know how this went. We have a couple other important questions. It's going to take you 60 seconds. So please do it right now. And I think that Sophie is dropping the chat. Sorry, Phoebe is dropping the chat. Sophie's not real. Phoebe is very, very real and wonderful. So the link is in the chat right now to the survey. Please click that. We will also, by the way, follow up with the links to Willie, link to Sophie, and other things. So first thing in the survey, we're giving away this book. Great book about how intelligence works for you and for me and for your family. Some of you have already read it and say things like, awesome book. It is. Make a note in the survey as well. Do that. So do that, please. A couple other things. We wrote an ebook with a little bit of help from AI, although mostly humans, on AI and how to do this. Check that out. We'll also send you a link to Willie. Let me know what you thought. We love it. Sophie, super awesome. We love your thoughts, especially if you're in the faith-based fundraising world. If you're not, check it out anyway. Super interesting. Really just sort of a remarkable shift in, what is probably the 800,000 year history of modern religion, or of religion generally. And then the other thing I want to invite you to in 2 days on Thursday is we're going to do a shorter session at 1 o'clock on Thursday. And we're going to be joined by Courtney Cohey. And Courtney is the Vice President of Annual Giving and Operations at what we call PanCan, which is a shorter version of the Pancreatic Cancer Action Network. And what Marshall and Courtney and I are going to talk about is a FreeWill product called the National Feature. The National Feature is for generate planned gifts at enormous scale. I think that Courtney's already seen $5 million in gifts in 2 years. Many people see even more. This is actually, we think, the most powerful tool in modern fundraising. We would love to have you there. So please, if you're sort of familiar with FreeWill, if you're a little familiar, come check this out. Really, really cool. And I'm excited to learn alongside you from Courtney. And that is it. So we're going to do a minute of questions, though we're mostly out of time. In 2 weeks on August 8th, and again, if you haven't filled out the survey already, please do that, as we'll also get you an invite. In 2 weeks, we're going to talk about fundraising from millennials, and we're going to take our first look at fundraising from Gen Z. So some of you are Gen Z, so great, we'd love to have you. A lot of you are like, what the heck is going on with Gen Z? Why are we on TikTok why are they on TikTok all the time? How is their life so much different? Why are they different in the workplace? What does that look like? And so we're going to really dive in on a lot of great research there. We've already started the work. There'll be a lot more work in the next 2 weeks for us to make that excellent. And so big thank you to the team that's going to make that happen. But we'd love to have you there as well. Again, RSVP in the survey. Blue asks, is there a link to the ebook? Again, if you actually just make a note in the survey, we will send that to you. So very, very simple stuff. Last thing is we're about to run out of time here. Do we have any creative ideas to share? Just shoot me an email at patrick@freewill.com. You can find me on LinkedIn, pretty easy to find, just Patrick at FreeWill. Yeah, we have a lot of questions. I have about a minute, so this is a great question. A couple of people are asking the question, if you use AI to write an email, do you know that email is duplicated through AI for another nonprofit? The answer is definitely not. It's not. And it's a little bit tricky for people to get their heads around, but it's not the case that you can sort of, another way to try it is for yourself is do this. Write a prompt, right? Say, hey, it's, whatever. Write a Giving Tuesday fundraising email for our nonprofit and highlight the need for stock giving or something like that. And do it and read it and tell us what you think. And then the way to kick the tires here is put the same prompt in 30 seconds later, exactly the same, and you'll see a pretty different result. It is not the case that there's sort of like some secret repository of all the information and we're just pulling it off the shelves. The way, if you told all of us to read page 38 from a book it would be this, right? So it's sort of generated newly every time. And the way to sort of really get your head around that is go do it yourself. Go put the same prompt in 3 or 4 times. Ashley has the same question about email calendars, same answer, right? If we did that prompt that we saw for Awesome Pets Alive, you would get different calendars, different dates, different puns, right? Different dog puns, different cat puns. So it's all there. If you haven't been able to open the link to the survey, we will email that out as well. But it's 1 o'clock on the East Coast, and we promise to let you out on time. So just want to say a huge thank you for joining. I mean, this stuff is sort of so interesting, so wild. So glad you're here and learning with us. We love putting this together. We love learning all the stuff it takes to share with you. And so, yeah, a little bit of homework. Go check out Willie. Go check out Sophie. Please join us on Thursday. We think that will also blow your mind in a totally different category. So come hang out with us. But have a great week to everybody, and look forward to seeing you all soon.